Hey, welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 21.
I don't know. I lost count.
I think it's 21. Anyway, It's just me, not French fry,
Pop-Tart.
and
Miss Sweet Pea. Hey, y'all.
so Chip and French fry are not able to be here, but I think we'll be able to make up for the lack of
It's
comments.
still going to be good.
Yeah.
So
We miss them, but it's going to be okay.
let's jump into it.
All right. This day in history,
Wow.
That was nice.
on December 12th in 1791.
It's old.
I know, this was cool.
Yeah.
The Bank of the United States, also known as the First Bank, opened for business in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
The
Imagine
first bank of the United States.
I don't know that it was the first bank, but that was the name of it. It's in capital letters, the First Bank.
So,
I have questions about
Well, there are
that.
still banks that are like first.
Yeah,
aren't
you
there?
would think that there were other banks.
There's
that,
churches that are called First Baptist Church.
I
so,
know.
that's not the first one. But
This is,
whatever.
but this was the Bank of the United States.
But
So
it wasn't the first.
nobody
I didn't look
knows.
it up. I
Oh.
probably should have, but I was busy doing
Okay.
other
So-
things.
Imagine what life was like without a bank.
Different.
Yeah.
1792, in Vienna, 22-year-old Ludwig van Beethoven received one of his first lessons in music composition from Franz Joseph Haydn.
Oh, you mean Beethoven, the one that wrote
Yes,
like Beethoven's Symphony? or whatever
Beethoven.
it
He was
is?
22 when he received
Isn't he
his
that deaf
first.
dude?
Yes, he was
Oh.
amazing. I've been trying to get Pickle to appreciate Beethoven.
He's old. Or no, he's dead
Well,
actually.
he's dead now. But he was awesome. Anyways, I thought that was cool. Here's
Each one of
another.
us.
Well, we all know that your appreciation for these kind of things could be greater.
Okay.
Mhm.
In 1800, on December 12th, Washington, D.C. was established as the capital of the United States.
Oh, wow. That's.
That was a long time ago, right?
That was,
What year?
Ancient.
1800.
1800s. That's like
that's exact.
more than like.
That's over 222 years ago.
That was
Almost
a
223
long-
years ago.
Time ago.
Yeah.
Then here's something a little more recent, although it was still way before y'all's time. December 12th, 1991. I thought Pickle would find this
Oh,
really
yeah.
interesting. At the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center in California, the first web server outside of Europe was installed.
It took that long? Good
Mhm.
grief.
1991.
Far behind. Wait, 1990. That's when y'all first got the web?
Yes.
Goodness.
I know. We
That's
used to
sad.
not have the internet, believe it or not.
What'd y'all do? Like to...
How did y'all pass the time?
We actually had imaginations back
No,
then.
like...
Oh.
If y'all
What's
needed-
an imagination?
I can't imagine having to go
Exactly.
to an encyclopedia or dictionary every time I want to look up
We
something.
did. We had to go to the library and do research and look at library books and stuff.
That's tough.
We didn't know it was tough. Then in 1997, this is something else to do with the internet.
Yeah.
The U.S. Justice Department ordered Microsoft to sell its internet browser separately from its Windows operating system
Really.
to prevent it from building a monopoly of web access programs.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that it?
You mean like. Oh, wow.
Excuse
yeah.
me. This was supposed to be a stunning revelation.
But.
Well, I mean,
Oh, something's going on. What's happening?
hello? We can't really... Let's see. Oh, hello?
Hello, who is this?
This is Random Ear Candy. Who is this?
Wait, this is the Random Ear Candy podcast?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
May we help
Yeah.
you?
Seriously? You mean I actually got through?
Hey, you sound a little familiar. Do we know you?
This is Chip.
Chip.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, how are y'all doing today?
We're
Oh,
doing
doing
great.
pretty good.
How are
Pretty fantastic.
you?
Well, I'm doing great. A little birdie did tell me that y'all were doing a podcast today.
We did. We
And,
are, and we miss you.
And I'm very sad that I'm not there. I'm working and trying to make a living. But
That's good.
Good job on
I
that.
just wanted to let y'all know that I feel very special right now because this is actually the first podcast that I've ever called into.
And it's the first caller this podcast has ever had.
Yeah, you're our first caller, Chip.
We are setting records, new records everywhere.
We are. We may would have had more callers if we actually had a phone number posted.
Yeah.
I know. So what is the topic about today?
The topic is miracles, and I'm so excited to get into this topic
Sweet
with
Pea's
everyone.
been going on and on about it. And I only know one of the stories, actually, because I had to go through and read one of them, but I don't know any of the others. So.
Well, a little birdie also told me that you had an overwhelming response
We
from
did.
the listeners.
It's been
and
awesome. We might even
so-
have enough for 2 segments on it.
Yeah, stick around, listeners, and you might be able to learn how to get into
So
episode 2.
even though I'm not there in the studio today, I'm so looking forward to hearing the recording of this podcast when it releases. And hey, good luck with the rest of the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
We
Chip.
miss you.
All right, miss y'all too. Love y'all and talk to y'all later.
Bye, Chip.
Bye.
Well, that just kind of happened, huh?
That was cool.
Wow.
So, y'all ready to go into the next segment of the podcast?
Yeah.
Yes, I am. I've been looking forward to this. I've been so blessed by all the little stories we've been getting in from our listeners and our loved ones and family members that have been willing to share some of the special things that have happened to them in their lives. We wanted to take at least one podcast, maybe more than one, and
Maybe
share some uplifting things to kind of encourage people through the holidays, through the Christmas season. And I want to start off with a story from Cindy from Missouri. It reads, I was going through a dreadfully difficult time soon after my mother died. There was a lot going on in our lives besides the grief of losing her so suddenly. One afternoon, I was warming up leftovers for supper and listening to a homeschool podcast. I felt so low and confused and uncertain on how to handle anything. I had reached a crisis in my life where I was almost ready to walk away from the American church for good. I was clinging to God and loved the worldwide church as a whole, but I was deeply disappointed in some aspects of the church and American culture. I suddenly felt His Spirit so strong, then a vision began to take place in my mind. It was so vivid, almost like I was dreaming wide awake. Everything was green and hilly. It reminded me of the Ozark Mountains, but greener and more lush. I was walking up a steep slope and saw Him. He was tending to sheep on the hillside. His hair was black and shaggy, and his eyes a dazzling hazel so full of love and delight. He reached His brown, scarred left hand down to me as I clambered up the path. Then I was standing eye to eye to Him, and His left hand was tenderly rested against my cheek and hair. I laid my own hand over His, and I could feel His veins and knuckles. He asked me what He could do for me, and I poured my heart out to Him and told Him I had no idea what to do about any of it. He said, I'll take care of it. Let me handle it. He showed me a storm coming in the distance, and we led His flock of sheep into a stone sheepfold connected to a low cottage built against the hillside. He called them with beautiful words I didn't understand. Once all was secure, we ducked into a low house-like building that contained a small, dimly lit, cozy room. There was a woman there with dark hair and a sweet face. She was a bit plump and ordinary looking, but the way he looked at her with such love and joy. He kissed her on the cheek, and she turned to me. She gave me a warm hug, and I just fell apart and wept while she held me. Then we all sat at a low table, and the woman brought Jesus bread, rich, dark bread rolls that He held over His head and
I
blessed
want
with
some bread rolls.
and blessed with a song full of more beautiful words I couldn't understand. Then He broke the loaves and gave me a portion to eat. I ate it, and it was rich, but nothing like any bread I had ever experienced before. I instantly felt filled with a strength I couldn't explain. Then it all began to fade, and I couldn't get it back. I pondered it. Later, I asked Him who the woman was. I suddenly realized she represented His bride, the church, especially the American church, I understood that I needed to acknowledge how much he loved her and all her imperfections, and I needed to cling to her because she would be my comfort and continuously serve my family the word, the bread of life. I'm so glad this happened at just the right time for me. I didn't imagine it, I'm sure. It was a sweet, miraculous, profound message from him that I desperately needed, and I did need the church much more in the next year when I lost my baby.
That's deep.
It was deep. I thought it was beautiful, like a beautiful scene.
Well, I have a story from Colton from Louisiana.
Awesome.
I'm going to read it from his perspective of view. About 9 or 10 years ago, on a Thursday morning, I woke up with a good bit before the time I was supposed to get up for school, with some pain in my left hip. When I woke up, I heard Dad getting ready to walk out the door and head to work. I called him in here and told him what I was feeling. He told me that it was probably just a Charlie horse from sleeping on it the wrong way. Well, fast forward, the pain was getting pretty intense, and it's now time to get up and get ready for school. I really did not feel like going at all. You could say it was because I didn't want to go, but no, it was supposed to be a field trip day. A very fun, enjoyable day. I ended up pushing through it and going on the field trip using crutches. As the day went on, the pain continually got worse. When we got home and pulled up to the house, Mom hopped out of the vehicle and I just sat there. Mom realized a moment later that I wasn't getting out and came to check on me. She realized I was running a fever. The pain just continued getting worse, and the fever was coming up all through the evening and on into the night. The next morning, Mom and Dad decided to bring me in to get an x-ray to see if a disc has slipped or just to see what was going on. After doing an x-ray, several other tests, they weren't able to find out really why, but they did find fluid in his hip due to some sort of infection. They kept me there overnight and I was discharged the next morning. They told us if my fever reaches over 103 to either come in immediately or call 911 to do emergency surgery to keep the infection from spreading to my organs, causing them to shut down. We asked what the emergency surgery was. They said they were going to have to amputate my leg.
Oh, mercy.
When the nurse was bringing me back in a wheelchair to the car, she made a comment to my parents, something along the lines of, "I can't believe they're letting him go home, still feeling this bad." Later that night, my fever started coming up. Of course, we'd been praying this whole time, but now my parents were getting very concerned. Side note, I said my parents because I wasn't fully aware of all that was happening.
Oh.
I wouldn't say I was unconscious, but I just wasn't fully there. Anyway, it just kept coming up right until 103, which is when they said to come back into the hospital. We called our pastor and his wife over and they prayed for me. Again, I don't remember exactly because it was close to 10 years ago and I was extremely sick. But sometime very soon after that, my fever started going back down and I didn't go back to the hospital. Over a period of a few weeks, I slowly got better and was able to walk more and more. It left me with a pretty bad limp for quite some time. During the time frame of being able to walk again, but still having the limp, we went back into the hospital for a follow-up. The doctors were amazed. They kept looking at my old numbers and test results compared to the ones they had just taken, and they were night and day difference.
Wow.
Not to mention being able to walk with a limp compared to not walking at all. Their words were, "We just don't know how this boy got better without any treatment." I told my mom, "I do. I felt something change when our pastor prayed for me." I know that it was nothing short of a miracle. For those of you who don't know me, I still have both of my legs, although I struggle with it a little when climbing ladders and such, but I still have what I consider the full use of my leg. To this day, the doctors still don't know what was wrong. And that sounds like the end of this story, but God wasn't finished showing me his ability to still work miracles. Although I recovered from the leg incident, I was left with lasting impacts. For some reason, after all of that, my immune system got extremely low. I would get sick all of the time. When kids at school had colds, I'd get fever and have flu-like symptoms for days and even weeks. The cycle of being sick for a couple of weeks then not being sick for a couple, then getting sick again, etc. Went on for several years. In 2018, I was asked to go on a mission trip to Mexico. I wanted to go very badly, but my parents were concerned about my health and my getting sick while away. They expressed their concerns to the person who asked if I would consider going, and the man told my parents that he and his wife would pray that this would be the trip where God would heal me. Again, God did nothing short of a miracle. I decided to go, and on the drive down there, I sat next to some young man for the entire drive down, about 18 hours. The night we got there, this young man got pretty sick, and I figured I'd be the next to get sick. But I didn't. In fact, since that trip, I have not had nearly as much trouble with getting sick. My immune system has just seemed to go back to normal. So, if you think God is out of the miracle working business, I have to disagree. He has done so much for me, and I know I am not the only one.
That is a miracle. That's an awesome story. Thank
Wow.
you,
It's
a really
Colton,
good
for
one.
sharing that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed hearing that. It's encouraging. I have one from Katrina from Ohio that she shared about her son. And I know Katrina personally, and I can attest to this. She starts out by saying, I feel such gratefulness from time to time when realizing how well my son Grant can talk. He was anointed and prayed for in the Christmas of 2012 when he was 3.5 years old because he was not able to talk. And I remember this. I don't know if you guys remember it. You were probably too little, Pop-Tart. But he really couldn't talk. And he was old enough to be able to speak in sentences. He really couldn't say hardly anything at all. He could say ma and da, but I believe that was it. This is her speaking, I used to work with him and he just couldn't even say the simplest of words. There were sounds he just absolutely couldn't make. I had an app that had been designed by speech therapists that I used to try to help him. Even with all the extra coaching I did with him, he still couldn't say anything that was more than one syllable, and even then he couldn't say very many of those one-syllable sounds. I remember he would say the end of the words where the beginning should have been. So he would like twist the words around, like say the endings first. And she said, I believe when I looked it up on the internet, he seemed to have all the symptoms of something called apraxia. I've read about this. I believe there may have been even different variations of apraxia. Depending on the severity, some children with apraxia are never able to speak. Some can learn, but it still usually requires a lot of extra effort and thought for them to be able to speak. It makes me sad when I think of how it seems that my youngest child, Hannah, has been able to talk forever. I feel like I missed a lot of those cute little things children say with Grant. I have so much thankfulness that he can talk, and I have a special story to tell him as he gets older. Sometimes in school we will just stop and thank God for what he did for Grant. He was anointed and prayed for on the last day of December 2012, and then my mom died on February 1st of 2013. When we were in Louisiana for her funeral, Grant distinctly said his brother's name, Connor. He had never been able to say anything remotely sounding like Connor. Since that time, he has improved by leaps and bounds. We were in India part of the time when Grant was having his speech problems, and I remember Clint, her husband, asking me more than once if I thought Grant was okay mentally, because he would sound so strange when he tried to talk. However, as his mother and being the primary caregiver at that age, I knew that Grant was smart and perfectly normal with his motor skills. I love the story of how God healed Grant. In order to have these stories, you sometimes have to go through some hard places first. I'm thankful for the faithfulness of God. And I can say that I know Grant, and he speaks
I know
great.
Grant too. I just saw him actually.
You did just see him.
And he's still talking just as much as my little brother, so
That's a lot.
just
Pop-Tart.
So anyway, I have a story from Adri from Louisiana. I believe in miracles, and I believe they come in all sizes. Some can be huge, and some can be so small that you might think it was just chance. But I believe true miracles can change your outlook in life. One really big miracle happened when I was only 17 years old. I was traveling with 3 other college friends down the coast of Brazil, an area unknown for us, and we had just left the beach. We were driving down this dirt road, and all of a sudden, we saw several cows partially blocking the road. To avoid hitting the cows, the driver swerved and actually lost control of the car. There was no shoulder, so the car flipped 6 times down a really
Whoa.
deep ditch. Mind that this was back in 1985, so there were no airbags to be deployed. After the accident, when I came back to my senses, my torso had gone out of the car window, and if the car had flipped one more time, I would have been crushed.
Oh, wow.
So despite deep cuts and bruises, the 4 of us walked out of the absolutely destroyed car, and we were brought back to the closest hospital by these 2 other cars that stopped. Both drivers were drunk. They were coming from the same party. So, nobody
Wow.
died or even got severely injured. You wouldn't believe it if you saw what remained of the car. It looked like a flat pancake.
Whoa.
I think
Oh.
small miracles happen more routinely, and sometimes we are just not attuned enough to notice. I notice them when I'm sad or in a bad place mentally, and all of a sudden the phone rings, and it's a loved one just checking in, or just when you look around you see all the beauty there is in the flowers, and the singing of the birds, and the deep blue sky above, and all that brings you relief, and you feel uplifted. Yes, I do believe in miracles.
That was really good.
It's
And
interesting. I didn't know that happened,
I didn't either. I've never,
because I know Adri.
I do too, and I've
And I
never
didn't know that happened to her.
Yeah,
I've never
me
heard
neither.
that story, and I like what she said about the small miracles. I think she's right about that we are surrounded by small miracles every day. Some of them we don't know about. Some of them we do. Are we
Yep.
ready for the next one?
Yes.
Is this going to be our last one for the podcast?
How long is it? Let's see.
It looks like this.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. This is another vehicle miracle, and this is from Mary from Louisiana. I loved this one as well. Mary says, I love the miracles idea. My biggest one happened when my daughter was a baby. We lived in Texas at the time. I was headed to drop her at daycare and then to work. I approached a 4-way intersection in the middle of our small town. I was turning left and the truck to my right was going straight. When our light turned green, we both went. An 18-wheeler came from the right and his brakes were out, so he barreled through the intersection, plowing into the truck to my right. I saw what was about to happen, took my hand off the wheel, turned to my baby in the back seat, put my hands on her, and asked God to protect her. The next thing I remember is a lady tapping on my window asking if we were okay. We were fine, but in shock. We were sitting in a parking lot to the left of the intersection and my car was facing the accident. There was debris from the accident on the hood of my car. I had no idea how I got there because when I stopped at the light, there was a line of traffic to my left. Witnesses told the police and newspaper that it looked as if my car was lifted into the air and gently sat down into the parking lot.
Oh, wow.
I know. Gave me goosebumps.
Oh, wow.
Police said it was the
I
force.
just got a chill.
I know. Police said it was the force from the 18-wheeler hitting the truck beside me and that I was lucky I didn't flip. I know better. God lifted us up and gently placed us out of harm's way.
18-wheeler will shoot you up, but it won't gently place you back down on the ground.
I know. The whole town talked about it for weeks. Anytime I was asked, I told them it was all God. He is still in the miracle business. Isn't that awesome?
It's
Oh,
crazy.
wow.
I wish I could have seen that moment when that car was lifted up and then like put gently back down again. Thank you, Mary, for sharing that with us. That was amazing.
That's very
That
good.
was truly a miracle.
Wow, that was crazy. I think I got my own little shivers and chills there. But anyway, this episode's a little bit shorter.
I
but-
have a little tiny one I can share.
Oh, you do?
Unless
Okay, we
you
can
want me
change the
to,
music again.
you want to put back on the miracle
Yeah,
music.
here we go. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this is not as spectacular as some of the ones we've heard, but to me, it was really special and it came at a time when I really needed it. I was a teenager and I was still living with my parents and I was going through a really, really hard time. And I was feeling so down and sad about some things in my life. And all of it, I think I was probably home alone. All of a sudden, the phone rang. This was before cell phone, so this was the home phone. The phone rang and I answered it, and it was a good friend. And I began talking to this friend, and before you know it, we were in deep conversation, and I was sharing the things that I was struggling with, And come to find out, they were going through some struggles as well and needed someone to listen to them. So we just spent a good little while on the phone encouraging each other and, sharing our difficulties and everything. And after a while, it came time to say goodbye. And I said, "Thank you for calling me." Guess what they said? They said, "I didn't call you. You called me." I was like, "I didn't call you." And they said, "Well, my phone rang." So somehow that I feel like that God worked out a little miracle for both of us on that day. He knew that we both needed something a little special, a little extra, and
That's kind of cool.
he made both of
But-
our phones ring.
What if somebody put y'all both on the same line and called y'all both and was listening
Did y'all
to y'all's
have operators
conversation?
back then?
We-
The operator could have called each of y'all.
We didn't use them. You just had to
okay.
punch the number in.
Oh, so y'all weren't that old.
No, we weren't
okay.
that old, pickle.
Well,
Aw.
that was a really interesting episode. In fact, we still have some more stories we weren't able to fit in. So
we
we're gonna
want to
have
do
a part
another
2.
episode, yeah.
We're going to have a part 2. And so we need all of y'all to send in y'all's miracle stories.
Well,
If y'all have some. Well, all of y'all. Yeah, we could just make this a
continuous thing.
If we get enough, we might have to do more. But anyway, I would like to thank. Well, actually, I'm going to stop the music again. This piano music, amazing piano music. I'd like to thank one of my good friends named Trent for letting us use his music. So,
Yeah, that was his
that was
music
really
we got
good
to
music.
enjoy.
very
And I
nice
want to thank
background.
everyone who sent something in. Y'all, you made our day. You made our week. We've been working on this podcast for a little while now, and it's really been special to us. Thank you very much.
Yep.
So email us at randomearcandy@yahoo.com and let us know what you want us to talk about next. Or anyway, thank you. Y'all ready?
See y'all later.
To
Bye.
Here
Yep.
we go. Bye-bye.